Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb. Welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek's podcast number 281. And joining us today at MotorWeek Central, Greg Carlos, Jessica Ray, and Stephanie Hart. And Stephanie, we're going to start with you because you're fresh back from the press preview of the 2023 all-new Honda HR-V, their smallest utility. And it's all new, and take it from there.
Yeah, it's all new, redesigned. It's offered in 3 trim levels, the LX, the Sport, and the EXL grades. The Sport one has a different looking grille. It has a black spoiler and 18-inch wheels. Looks really good. All trims have LED headlights and brake lights that really elevate its style. I personally love how this crossover looks.
So this is it used to be their subcompact. Has it grown any?
Yeah, it is longer and wider this time around. When I was in it, I felt like the cabin was very roomy, a lot of headroom. Also great visibility on this car.
What's the power?
158 horsepower, 138 pound-feet of torque.
So nothing outrageous, but you didn't feel like it needed any more?
In my opinion, I did feel like it needed a little bit more. Horsepower is up from the last generation. However, I did put it in sport mode, and I really liked the feeling of the car in sport mode.
So it probably adjusted the throttle to snuff. What about the feeling of the cabin? I mean, Hondas always have a very open feeling, but sometimes they do some weird things with the instrument panel. Was there anything there that you had a hard time getting used to?
Well, the good thing about this crossover is there's a lot of Civic vibes in it.
Okay.
So it's very simple, the cabin this time around, modeled after the 2022 Civic. Mm-hmm. So it was great. A lot of knobs, easy to use.
We like knobs.
Yeah, they're slowly but surely making a return. Did you have a chance to either sit in the back seat or look at the cargo bay, or any opinions on whether it looked like it would do the duty?
Yeah, I sat in the back seat. It was very comfortable. I thought the driver's seat was really comfortable as well. The largest cargo area in its class, which was nice. Yeah.
So you did some minor off-roading?
Unfortunately, I didn't.
Okay.
I wish that Honda did put an off-roading portion into our first drive event.
Were you mostly in a city?
But I did go up a mountain, but it wasn't really...
wasn't off-roading.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that
I
off-roading.
would say it's interesting because one of the new drive modes is a snow mode.
Yeah.
For the first time, I think, on the HR-V. And, of course, it's June, so no snow, but... it would have been kind of cool to test that out. Maybe,
I mean,
maybe
their
by the time we get it in.
Their systems are very capable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any other impressions you came back with?
Well, it does drive on the same platform as the 11th generation Civic. Also,
which we know is then very competent.
The engine is the same. I really liked the hill descent control feature. I've seen a similar feature on a lot of luxury SUVs that are much more expensive. So this is standard. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that is.
A really nice value.
Very interesting feature to have standard on such a little car.
Did you use it?
I didn't, because again, it's meant more on off-roading, so that wasn't built into the program. But hopefully I can use it. But,
so in theory, it could be good.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
generally speaking, Hondas have always been, and this goes back a long time, everyone looks at them and say, oh, it's a Honda, it's not really a real off-road vehicle. And then they basically start doing, rocks and mud. I'm not talking serious stuff, but enough to get to a campsite or a cabin. And they just do really, really well. So there's no reason to think this won't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great value to even have that built into this. That's really incredible, in my opinion. All you do is push a button, select a speed between 2 and 12 miles per hour, and the vehicle maintains that set speed for you. all you have to do is concentrate on steering down the mountain or steep hill. And this is great for anxious drivers who are scared to go down a mountain that is snowy. So I think this is really great.
So it's downhill cruise control. Mm-hmm. So anything you didn't like or would have liked to have seen changed?
As I mentioned, I would like to see some more horsepower in this vehicle. I did ask a Honda executive why it didn't have more horsepower, and he just said, everything's a trade-off. So,
well, that's dancing around the question, isn't
in
it?
life,
If you
right?
ask PR,
Yeah.
they're like, what do you mean? That's plenty of horsepower.
Thanks, Stephanie. We're going to move on now to a horse of a different color, the 2022 Nissan Ariya. And Jessica, Nissan's first all-electric SUV. We've been hearing about it for at least 2 years. It's here now. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think I would say that this sort of. It's meant to be a little bit more of an upscale EV, right? I would say it kind of fits somewhere in between Nissan and Infiniti. Specifically in the inside. Maybe a little bit more toward Infiniti, but definitely like it's nicer than most Nissans, so it's sort of like inching toward Infiniti. Exterior-wise, if you haven't seen the Ariya, I hate to say it to say it this way, but this might be the best way to describe it. It kind of looks like a futuristic version of the Rogue Sport.
Oh, okay. That's reasonable.
Which, that's another Nissan model. But yeah, imagine a futuristic version of the Rogue Sport. Kind of has that similar like silhouette to it.
Well, it does look like a concept vehicle.
Yes,
Yeah.
a little bit. Because it's very smooth, pretty, I hate using the word jelly bean, but a little, it has that very smooth, like, I don't want to say flat either.
Aerodynamic.
Yeah. I was trying to avoid that word, but aerodynamic is the word to use. And the reason I said Rogue Sport was because I was in my neighborhood going for a walk one day shortly after I drove the Ariya, and a Rogue Sport passed by me, and I thought, oh my gosh, that looks very similar.
Well, it probably came out of the same design studio.
Yeah, very similar design. Anyway,
What's some of the stats?
Yeah, let's move on to some of the more interesting stuff, right? So it comes in two different versions. There's a front-wheel drive version, and there's also an all-wheel drive version. There's a lot of trim levels and stuff. So right now, all we have is like EPA estimated ranges, which actually they say EPA estimated range, but these aren't cleared quite yet with the EPA. It's not on fueleconomy.gov. But they're saying that their longest range can get up to 304 miles. But their shortest range on a smaller battery pack, which is a 63 kilowatt hour battery pack, can get 216 miles. So we're talking the base Ariya, front wheel drive, range 216 miles, 214 horsepower, 221 pounds.
So the 304, is that still front-wheel drive?
That is still front-wheel drive, but you'll get 238 horsepower.
So it's front-wheel drive for a lot of the EVs that we're seeing are coming in as rear drive with two-wheel drive.
Right.
So this is basically more traditional front-wheel drive. I wonder why they did that.
Well, so to me... Well, I can talk a little bit more about driving it, but very similar to, say, like the mission of like the BZ4X. This is meant not to be the most efficient and the best EV on the market. It's meant to be a transition EV. This is meant to get somebody out of a gas vehicle, put them in an EV.
Without having to change anything about how they drive as far as feel and so forth.
Exactly, because there's no... one pedal drive here. I mean, it gets close. You can adjust the regen a little bit, but there is no true one pedal drive. So, driving it was incredibly comfortable. I drove it in New York City, which is, I like driving EVs in cities because
you had it. You had the ultimate experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate car previews in New York City.
But also, I like driving it in New York City because this isn't a big vehicle by any means, but it still felt like almost the size of a sedan. It's not big, but this is a crossover, and it has a decent amount of cargo space. The rear passengers have a pretty good amount of space as well. And the interior is, like I said, I think this is inching toward infinity. And my one thing that I didn't like so much is that it has a fair bit of haptic controls.
Explain what that is.
So haptic is, it's not a button, but it kind of is a button at the same time.
Tricks you into thinking it's a button.
Yes, it tricks you into thinking, because it's basically a flat surface, and then you click it, and it makes a clicking noise and engages whatever you just clicked.
But it doesn't really move.
It does not really move. The good thing about haptic is that it gives you feedback, so you know if you click something or not. But I thought that like all of the climate controls were haptic, and they were on like this open pore wood sort of like trim. I don't even know if it's like true open pore wood, but like I just wasn't the biggest. I was like, I don't know, put it on the screen. I'll just take it on. I'll take the climate controls on the screen.
I don't
here.
like it. I mean, it's been around for a while, and they keep coming back to it, and it's like, just give me something that gives me a tactile feel that something has happened.
Well, I will say the benefit to this haptic is that it was not like piano black. So
at least you could see it.
So not only could I see it,
Oh,
I could
you
see
didn't
it, but
have
no smudge marks
smudge
everywhere.
marks.
That's
Oh,
the problem. There's
okay.
smudge marks everywhere. But basically, I mean, it had like a really big display, and like I think it achieves its mission. I think it's a very comfortable vehicle that a lot of buyers will like because it's like driving a normal car.
What about pricing? I'm going somewhere with this.
So I wish I could even tell you like when it was coming out.
Yeah,
but there's still like
they
the
say this
details
fall,
are still
maybe.
TBD.
Yeah, one of the things with pricing is that Nissan, obviously, with the Leaf, has been building electric vehicles so long, they don't have any government incentives left.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just seen General Motors lower the price on the Bolt EV and EUV, and talking about the new Blazer at $33. So this is probably not going to be that expensive.
I want to say this has to be at least 40.
But if they are at that price without incentives, I'm not sure they'll be competitive with it.
Well,
so maybe that's why they're...
Yeah, they'd have to... You'd think they saw what Toyota did with the BZ, which is just over 40. You would think they're going to try to undercut them, even if it's just by a little bit. So they're probably going to aim for that sub-40 mark.
Because Toyota, I think... Does Toyota still have any incentives left? I think they do.
I think, they do.
They do. They definitely do.
So they've got to be competitive.
Nissan doesn't.
We're going to come back to Greg. He's going to bring us up to date on some of our long-term vehicles at the end of the podcast. But we're going to switch gears now to our lightning round. And this involves Apple. Apple recently unveiled the next generation of Apple CarPlay, which I have to admit I use daily. The update will allow CarPlay to read more of the vehicle's data like speed, range, climate, and will allow the user interface to expand to the dash cluster on certain models. What do you think of Apple getting more real estate inside of new cars? That's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I'm like you, John. I use it in the car on a daily basis just because it's what they promised it would be, Apple that is, and it's just seamless transition from using your phone outside of the car into the car. And it does still get a little glitchy, and that's across the board. It's not just a car thing. I've even put it in an aftermarket unit in my wife's car, and it has the same exact glitches that it does in brand new cars. So that's like an Apple thing. But
I use it wired for charging, and then that gets confused with the Bluetooth information. I mean, it's not seamless.
I'm excited to see the execution as it moves across the whole gauge cluster, because that's the idea, right? Is that it's for cars and trucks that have that whole long digital gauge cluster. It's going to take over the whole thing. I don't have any reason to doubt Apple in this. I feel like they will make it look great. I think it'll work near flawlessly. So I guess the short answer of that is I'm all for it. Can't wait.
Yeah, no, I mean, it looks really cool. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how it's implemented in the different vehicles. Well, I think the adoption rate will be still pretty big, because
but that means car makers are giving up more and more of their control over the interior.
True.
And that that one of their game plans was to use a lot of that display for advertising that they would make money off of.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
Well,
Didn't know
they haven't
that.
done any of that.
No, they haven't done it,
You
and it's
know?
been talked about. But this kind of gives that up.
I will say, we drive a lot of new cars, and so I think one of my favorite executions of like native UX working well with CarPlay is like Mercedes does a phenomenal job of that. And I saw that they, of course, and they, gosh, only knows how much they spent on engineers and designers and everything to create
MBUX.
this amazing. I mean, it really is an amazing experience in the infotainment of that car. And they are like, obviously, one of the big partners with Apple to move forward with the second generation of, or the next generation of CarPlay. So
I think they've just realized that's what customers want.
True.
They want to be able to use their phone seamlessly in the car.
yeah, and I think it looks cool. I hope it's just not too distracting because already we have distracted drivers and there's a lot of widgets and stuff. I think it's great that, it'll actually be able to read stuff because, like, for example, Apple CarPlay now in certain vehicles knows that you're in an EV and will actually, the maps will do a route planning guide for you. So that can only be better and I think advantageous, especially in an electric vehicle.
It's going to be interesting to see if Android follows suit and how quickly.
True.
Yeah, because people, we forget that there are two systems out there and they're very competitive. Okay, we're going to head back to Greg right now and give us a little update on our long-term fleet, which is getting smaller and smaller because of the pandemic and car supply.
Yeah, it's smaller, but we still have a nice variety, I think.
we do.
And we actually just added one, which I'll get to. Right now, probably the most used vehicle is... it's a toss-up between the Outlander and the Prius, I'd say. The
We have a Prius
that
Prime.
is. So the Mitsubishi Outlander was new, which they share a platform now with the Nissan Rogue. So a lot of similarities if you're in a Nissan Rogue, which is a good thing because it punches above its weight class when it comes to interior design and comfort.
Yep.
It's a darn good looking vehicle inside, and that's not necessarily how we all felt about our plug-in hybrid, the 2019 version.
Yeah, but this is a totally different vehicle.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me, and I don't want to dominate this, but I really thought and do think it feels different than the Rogue. This is not a cookie cutter or badge engineered vehicle. To me, it still had that Mitsubishi, a little bit rough edge, a little rugged edge. I felt like I was in, we used to call Mitsubishi SUVs mountain goats, and I still felt like this vehicle had that capability. I don't know
It's
if
funny that
anybody
you
else
say that because I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be tuned to be softer than the
It's
than
interesting
the Rogue.
to me. I heard more. I thought it was. I didn't do a back-to-back comparison, but I felt like I was in a different vehicle. I didn't. If you told me and I was a buyer, it was a Nissan Rogue, I would have said, "Oh, really?" So, anyway,
Yeah, regardless of how you feel about that aspect,
I liked it. I liked it.
I just think it's a lot for its sub $40,000
Yeah, it's a
price
lot for the
tag.
money.
And
ours is loaded.
Yeah, it's not the most powerful thing, not the most agile thing, but what you get for the money, I think. More people should probably include it in their compact SUV shopping list. And my final thing is that we're getting nearly 30 miles per gallon, and that's combined. Just
and it's
our
big,
daily driving.
square. It looks like it chops through the wind.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I took it on a 1,200-mile trip, and I got right at about 30, and I was like flabbergasted that it did so well on regular gas too.
Yeah, and I think it has adequate power. I don't even say it. Maybe even a little bit more than adequate. And everybody
It's
is like, it's got a
right?
CVT.
Yeah, it's CVT.
But the CVT in it is actually really good. You don't feel like it's like chugging along. Like if you need to get a bit of power, you can get the power that you need.
The God's honest truth is most people who buy this car are not going to realize it has a CVT.
True. Yes.
That's
Yes,
just like
I
what
agree.
it is. You hear so many people complaining about them. I've complained about them, but the vast majority of people who are just driving this thing on a daily basis will not care or even know.
I agree.
And that's the best praise you can give it. But to the fuel economy point, we'll move over to the Prius Prime, which is a plug-in hybrid, getting toward the end of its life cycle. So we'll get a new one here probably in the next
year.
probably
Model
year or
year,
two.
I
Yeah.
think next model year probably.
And yeah, so we plug this one in, you get a full charge, and I've been trickle charging it at my house overnight, easily getting a full charge,
Yep.
which gets me about 20 miles. That's a good chunk of my commute on the highway. So our total average is 58.3. That's all things. That's engine. That's plugging in. But our last update over just between, I don't know, maybe a month or so, we were up well over 60. And that's,
Yeah.
again,
Probably doing
because of how
more
much we
in-town
were
driving.
plugging in.
Yeah,
and
it had been here, and we've been, people have been taking it overnight. And
Yeah,
stuff,
and it's
plugged in a lot.
you forget. So this was Toyota's first car on the TNGA platform. It's their global the platform for most of their vehicles, and it's actually surprisingly agile. I'm sure people are laughing at me, but I've
it
actually
is.
driven
I
this
like
thing
it a
with
lot.
some extreme spirit
Yeah.
because I like doing that, and
It's a huge improvement over the previous generation Prius Total.
it's a nice driving vehicle. It could be.
They even made the seats pretty decent.
Yeah, we'll love the updates when it comes to that screen because we're noticing a lot of glare pretty much in every situation, which is kind of a bummer.
And it'll get probably the new updated
Their new
Toyota
infotainment is
which
great.
is good.
Yeah, this one is clearly behind the times, but as a vehicle, and again, the fuel economy in these times is is nice. Which then leads me over to our Passat. This is the last Passat that we'll have. Who knows if it'll come back. Car makers like to bring back names these days, but another fuel sipper, 32 mpg combined. And that's, we're talking about just like a sedan that's chugged along for like a decade.
Mid-size sedan.
Yeah, it's a mid-size, but it feels like a full size.
Yeah.
Huge amount of room, especially in the rear seat.
Volkswagen's thing is, I've said this a million times, is they put a car in a segment and just make it bigger than all the other cars in the segment. And they've done that here. And there's, again, speaking to the Prius, it lags behind others in terms of comfort and convenience. It just doesn't have all the updated tech. But as a daily driver, I throw my kids in the back in car seats.
Yeah.
I can't complain. I think it's better than subcompact SUVs. It's easier to access that back seat.
And even though production has stopped from the Chattanooga plant, they still have some on the lots. And I think it's one of the steals of the year myself.
I think it's all the car most people need.
Yeah.
It's incredibly simple, and it's I would say fun to drive.
It's got that Volkswagen vibe to the driving.
The Volkswagen vibe to drive. It's a great around town driver. It's got plenty of pep. You don't feel like it's lagging behind. I think its design language is going to also just age pretty well. I don't think you can go wrong with the Passat.
I got a question for Stephanie. If you were in the car market today, would you automatically go buy an SUV, or would you still look at a sedan?
Well, I am in the car market right
that's
now.
what you are, and your last car was a sedan.
My last car was a sedan, and I want a compact crossover.
Do you?
Yeah.
Just for the extra utility.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it fits my lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are you looking for all-wheel drive?
It's not a must for me.
Gotcha.
As long as it's front-wheel drive.
Because I say that seems to be a must for a lot of people.
It does.
I think it is.
It
Must have.
does.
I understand.
But I can go either way. For me, I want something more affordable, and I would sacrifice that.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
years ago, Subaru actually did a study, and it showed definitively that if you have good tires on a front-wheel drive vehicle, it's about 80% as capable as an all-wheel drive vehicle.
Yeah.
I
in
believe
most driving situations.
Before we move
Oh,
on,
we've got one more.
My
One
more.
favorite,
Big one,
my
big
favorite
one.
edition.
Yeah.
We just got it in two
Just
days
fresh
ago,
off
and it took
the
a
boat.
while. We were waiting a long time because of production slowdowns. The Kia Carnival. The minivan.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, the multi-purpose vehicle.
vehicle.
Yeah, man. We
got it in a great color too.
I've mentioned my
Burgundy.
little meatballs like 3 times now, and to be able to throw them in a minivan, I finally converted my wife over to the van life. We don't own one. I hope to change that at some point in the future. But yeah, super excited about that. We did get one. We probably got a higher trim level than we expected to.
Yeah.
This is the top
yes.
model, I believe.
Yeah, it's the SX Prestige, which gets the VIP lounge second row seats, which are like that's exactly what they sound like.
Economy Plus or Business
Yeah,
Class.
man, they move every which way. They recline. They do anything you want them to do except go into the floor or come out of the vehicle, which is kind of a bummer.
Practicality part of
If you want to have that versatility, just don't go with the Prestige.
But I have to say, having said that, and I basically like floor length, it's still a very long floor. I mean, you give up some utility, like you certainly can't put a 4x8 sheet of plywood in there, but it's still pretty darn long. So
Yeah, and you know
And low.
And
That's
low.
the
And
point.
low, my-
I'm sick of lugging and throwing stuff up into it. And I'm tall. I can get things up into a high vehicle, and I just enjoy dropping them down into a minivan.
I loathe a high load floor because like it comes up to like almost my chest area.
vertically
sometimes. I'm
challenged.
5 foot tall. My mom has a Lexus GX, which has the highest load floor, and she's only 5'2", and I'm like, what are you doing? But yeah, no, I'm excited to drive.
Yeah.
It's also I've driven it. I think I've driven it the most out of anybody. I've driven it about 5 miles. I put 5 miles on the odometer, and so far, like adequate power, really smooth. We don't know about the fuel economy. Quite yet, but
on our test of it, we got 22.
which is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that means it'll probably
It's a
do about
it's just-
25.
It's their V6
It's
they've
It's a
used
V6.
forever. So.
It'll do about 25, 26 on the highway, and that's about
Almost
what they
300
do.
horsepower.
I'm assuming that's the same V6 in like the Palace.
I would
Palisade.
expect-
It's the
I
same
think it is.
3.3
Genesis,
liter.
yeah,
It's the same
yeah,
V6, yeah.
I spent a couple of days riding around or being driven around in one. Where was I? Carnival in Peoria, Illinois. I was out there at the local public television station. Very nice people, but they had one as a new company vehicle, and it had the regular seats. It wasn't the high-end trim. Very comfortable, very easy to get in and out of. They absolutely loved it. And it was also nice to get in one that doesn't have all the bells and whistles because it still was incredibly well equipped. And very, very quiet. And I must say, I know
Ours
they
is
love
fully equipped at 47.8.
Which
that what it is?
Like that,
which
yeah.
is really a bargain.
And
I
it
think
starts
so.
at around 35,
Yeah.
which
And then we're talking second row screens again,
Yeah.
the VIP
Yeah, it
lounge,
really
the digital
is. It
gauge
really is
cluster,
well
all for under
equipped.
50 grand. No all-wheel drive though. This the Carnival does not offer all-wheel drive. Front-wheel
Which
drive
the
only.
take on all-wheel drive minivans is very small.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, thank you, sir, very much. Before we wrap things up, has anybody got a rant or a rave?
We missed Lisa.
don't miss our viewer
I'm sorry,
question,
Lisa,
John.
our viewer
Got ahead of
question.
himself.
We've all been primed for this because this is a thorn in our sides. We have a viewer question from Lisa, and it's short but sweet. Forgive me, Lisa. How can we avoid markups at dealerships, both new and used cars? I think I want to hear what everybody has to say about this one.
Well, I mean, there is a thing you can do where you just build a car instead of buying one
Yeah,
off the
but
lot.
that doesn't necessarily protect you.
True.
Be patient, yeah,
Now,
'cause you have to wait for
what are
that.
we talking about? We're talking about the so-called, right now, if you want to buy a new car, let's say, you're going to pay sticker price because
Yes.
everything's in short supply. There is no real dealing. And what a lot of dealers have done is add money on top of that. They call them packs. They call them economic adjustments. Whatever you want to call them, it's money above the MSRP. And I'm not necessarily talking about buying something extra like a warranty or even a coating or anything else. This is just flat out extra
It's
money.
the sheer fact that the cars are hard to come by
Right.
and that they can charge
Supply
more
and
money,
demand.
and people are paying
and
that
they
extra
are,
price.
and it drives me crazy, and I hate it, and I really encourage dealers not to do it because it's going to bite you on the back end. And customers, I have to warn you that if you do that, that does not add to the value of your vehicle when it becomes used. So you are going to be underwater, owing more on the vehicle than it's worth longer than you would be without it. And that's going to affect you when you go trade this vehicle in. Having said that, can you avoid it, or at least how can you know more about it?
Well, there is a very recent resource that just sort of popped up because of this. There's a website called markups.org. And it's a phenomenal resource to be able to search the different markups that dealerships are putting on certain model vehicles.
More information for the buyer.
Yeah. So essentially, like, for example, I was looking at it kind of recently because I really want to order a Ford Maverick in August. And so I knew that I had heard that some dealers were even marking up custom orders. They would get delivered, and even though you agreed on a price, but you didn't really agree on a price because there's no sales purchase until you actually go in and finance the car. So, and people were seeing like dealerships say you pay $5,000 or we're just not going to give you the car.
Right.
And then you got to like talk to Ford and, have Ford fix it and da-da-da-da-da. So I said, I'm going to try to avoid that. I'm able to search on markups.org for dealerships in Maryland, and you're able to search if they've given markups or if they have not given markups. So it turns out a local dealership or a dealership that's local to like where I grew up is not marking up any orders, any custom build orders. Now they might be marking up a couple of other things. I did see they did have like one markup, and it was like $2,500 on like a Sprinter van. But to me, actually, I'm like, that doesn't actually seem like that high of a markup. But then you can see other people who were marking up $35,000 on a new F-150 Raptor.
I know dealers that are getting $6,000 and $7,000 on just routine vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah, extra.
So basically, it's a great resource to see what dealerships near you are selling their cars for.
Anything to add, Greg?
I was just going to say the basic stuff that even in these when you're not in these times of high markups, just be willing to travel. When you're searching online, expand that search to 100 miles, 200 miles, and just know that you're going to have to be a little bit patient because, a lot of dealers are putting markups on cars, but there are plenty of dealers who aren't, and you just kind of have to find them and just be patient with it.
Stephanie, any to add? I mean, you just said you were in the market for a car.
Yeah, I would just say wait it out as long as you can.
Excellent.
That's what I'm doing. But it's been a long road, a very long road. I can't believe I'm still waiting.
Yeah, and we don't know how much longer we're all going to have to wait, but it could be well into next year. That's what they said last year.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that was our rant pretty much, but does anyone have a rant or a rave they'd like to add before we wrap things up? Thank you, Lisa, by the way, for a great question.
A rant or a rave?
Could be a rave.
As we speak on this podcast, and we're in late June, I have noticed some cracking of gas prices.
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
Let's hope that continues. Oil has dropped down almost not quite 20% from where it was. And this morning I noticed that my neighborhood station had overnight dropped the price 15 cents, which shocked me.
So what is it at?
It was at $2.75.
No.
I mean, $4.75. I wish it was $2.75.
Tell me where that is.
Let's go fuel up there.
$4.75, and it was $4.99 yesterday.
Wow.
So
I've been seeing like $4.85.
Yeah.
But $4.75, that's good. Yeah. Well, they're apparently suspending the federal gas tax.
Well, as we speak,
that has not gone
into
effect.
Hasn't gone through yet, but it probably will.
And that is 18 cents for 3 months.
Interesting, though, the Biden administration has turned to the states and said, "Why don't you get on board with this too?" And that's very interesting. See if they can
Maryland did it for 30 days or something like that.
Yeah.
Was it even 30 days?
It was 30 days.
It was a month.
Virginia's had
That's our
trouble
home
doing
state.
it. They can't get it through Virginia, although I think they wanted a 3-month. But they're having a lot of trouble getting that through.
I mean, it's a lot of revenue. I mean, our gas tax is, I believe, 36 cents a gallon.
And it's going
but
up.
the thing with Maryland, I mean, not to get too into it, we had a surplus, which is insane.
And most states do.
And still only stuck to the 30-day thing, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, we have the money. Like, maybe we should spend it. But
write your local
anymore.
congressman on your state level and your national level and tell them to get on board with
elections are
us.
coming up.
Elections
So.
are
I got mine. Yeah. I got to start doing my research on how to vote.
Thank you, Greg Carlos, our Over the Edge reporter. Thank you, FYI reporter Stephanie Hart, for joining us. Digital producer Jessica Ray. Thanks also to our audio engineer, Jillian Cookman, our podcast producer, Jessica, as well, and podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Hey, everybody out there, if you've listened to our podcast and you're new to MotorWeek and you want to catch the full MotorWeek television series, hop on over to our website at motorweek.org. Pull down at the top the tab that says About the Show. You can put in your zip code and find the local public television station in your area, times and dates when it's showing.
But John, what if we're not on their local public television station?
Well, then you go on over to our cable partner at mavtv.com and pull down their schedule. Or you get really adventuresome and go over to youtube.com/MotorWeek, our MotorWeek store on YouTube. Almost everything we've done for the last 5 years plus is on there.
Since about 2009,
Yeah,
John.
well,
so we're looking
what
at
if you
almost
get
10 years.
streamed?
Yeah,
12 years. 12
Can
years.
people request a transcript of the show and just read it via snail mail? Can we
on
do
our
that?
website.
I think you can.
Everything.
Yeah.
I'll even
Actually,
sign it.
I'm not sure we can
Actually,
do. We don't do printed transcripts anymore. Do we?
We do not.
No.
I will say though,
We used
if,
to still have to do them for the
if
network.
you had a show in mind, like an older show or something, and send me an email. I'll see what I can do.
Oh,
If you got it.
Careful what you wish
exist.
for.
I actually
I know.
have. I
You
actually
want-
have filing cabinets
I know.
full of old transcripts.
my office was had a
Your
couple
office
of those
was the
filing
filing cabinet. You can also stream us for free at pbs.org/MotorWeek.
Or on
all the most recent episodes. Jessica.
Or on the PBS video app. That's a handy thing to download because it's not just Motor Week. You have pretty much everything that PBS streams for free.
If you have a screen, you can watch Motor Week. And with that, thanks everyone for being a part of Motor Week.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.